Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Bitcoin and Beyond, where we explore the edges of Bitcoin and open systems. I'm your host, I'm Melanie Carstens, and today's episode is brought to you in collaboration with Deorganized Media, produced by Peace Love, and powered by Bitcoin Live. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. My guest today is somebody I'm really excited to be talking about. He is the founder of BNS One, and spends a huge amount of time and energy helping us develop digital identity here on Bitcoin through Stack. So welcome, Snazzy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to get into a conversation with you, particularly about sovereignty on Bitcoin. It's obviously a huge topic for everybody who is both in the stacks and the Bitcoin ecosystem. But before we get into that, let's go back a little bit to rewind before Bitcoin, before stacks, before crypto, before the work you do today. While I was kind of looking into a couple of things to talk about, I discovered that you studied fine art. Is that right?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah. Let's
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Let's talk about
Two
that.
seconds. I'm just going to close the door actually.
Okay.
Oh, I guess.
Definitely live and unedited, as you can see.
Yeah, I've got a Doge, so I just realised definitely need to shut the door.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I've got a fine art degree. Yeah, no, I've been very creative, my whole life. Um, and I did it throughout school, did it in college. I've got a diploma from college as well in art. And then I went to university, and got a basically I kind of studied sculpture at university. So I specialised in sculpture, conceptual sculpture actually. So the stuff that you kind of make stuff that's sort of mostly based around ideas and concepts and yeah. So I was making art out of junk basically.
That's
Yeah, at university.
incredible. Do you still kind of you see this is doing this thing again. Do you still are you still involved in art? I mean, do you still spend in your spare time? I mean, are you still kind of very creative in that way?
I was, yeah, I was. I kind of over time I've got less so. So I built and scaled. So this was after university. I built and scaled a creative business.
Yeah.
So we had artist franchisees that delivered creative services to vulnerable people across the country. And at its height, we had about 40 franchisees. So it's a very, very successful business, very, very successful creative business, delivering, as I say, creative services. So that could be, like clay modeling, it could be painting, it could be, just a whole variety, using a whole variety of different art materials and mediums. And yeah, as I say, I sort of built and scaled that over a period of about 8 or 9 years.
How did that
Um,
switch happen? Because a lot of the work that you do, even I mean, it's been 15 years, right? You've been working in sort of
from the
um,
charitable sector, yeah.
yeah, in charitable. That's right. Now, how did that happen from the fine arts?
Um, yeah. So, well,
Did you ever,
the
sorry, let me just, sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you, but I just want to go back. Did you, after university, did you work as a sculptor? Was that kind of your dream was that what you were going to do? You were going to be an artist?
Yeah. So I did when I was at university. I did. I wanted to be like a professional artist, but as I think a lot of people find out when they're at university, they're studying fine art degrees. You very quickly realise that it is very difficult to make it as a professional.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to make money from your artwork. Obviously, NFTs. The sort of introduction of NFTs since sort of largely since 2020 has been incredibly helpful, I think, for a lot of artists. It's definitely helped a lot of artists generate an income, that may have not otherwise done so. So when I was at university, I definitely wanted to become a professional artist. I wanted to become a sculptor. I looked up to people like Damien Hirst, Jeff Koons, Anish Kapoor, these amazing artists that have built these amazing sculptures and things, and but they're also kind of businessmen at the same time as well. That's also a key thing, and it's also been a key part of my life as well, is that I've wanted to create and generate art, but at the same time also turn it into a business. And that's kind of where the business that I ended up starting sort of came from, and expanded into a business.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you kind of had this thought, okay, I'm at varsity, I've studied fine arts, very difficult to kind of make that a reality of me. The struggling artist is literally where every artist ends up. It's like a top, few. I mean, in real life, I work in fine art, so I'm very aware of what it's like. So, okay, so then you had this thing, okay, we're going to take art, we're going to turn it into business. How did the charitable side of things start? Because that's been a lifelong journey since you began working, right?
I mean, because I've always been interested in making an impact on people's lives, and so that kind of came into play when I was because I was a support worker for people with learning disabilities for 2 years, for a period of 2 years. So this was before the business, before I started the business, and it was one of the chaps that I supported. He loved to do arts and crafts, so he was really stimulated by that activity, and I just thought, maybe this is something that could be turned into some sort of business. But at the same time, I know that I'm making a difference to people's lives here as well, which was something that I was really interested and passionate in. And I just thought, okay, I'll just start contacting some care homes, some learning disability services, and it just went from there. And I very quickly built up the business myself. So I was delivering the creative services in the first instance, and then I brought sort of around 2.5 years into it. I then started bringing franchisees on, and built it into a nationwide business that was also making an incredible impact on people's lives. We were reaching about 2,000 people a month.
Wow.
So we reached a lot of people. We were delivering around 350 creative services each month as well. So 40 artists, 350 sort of creative services, creative sessions, and about 2,000 people each month were impacted by our services. It was really incredible, and it's still going today, but it's a bit of a shadow of its former self, let's say. But it's still going, and it's still making an impact, still making a positive impact on people's lives.
Yeah, it amazes me, how the value of art has such incredible value for society, and yet it's not valued. Monetary wise, it's sad. But anyway, have you? Yeah. So
it is. I agree. Yeah, it is. It is. I agree. Yeah, and I, we can sort of talk about this a little bit later on, but I sort of think, the whole kind of creative pursuits, sort of artistic abilities, creative abilities, that are now kind of maybe coming into a bit of a conflict, let's say, and question because of AI. I kind of think things are just going to come full circle. So whereas obviously, kind of culture and arts and being creative was incredibly important, and still is very incredibly important to humanity and human beings. Obviously, AI is now starting to be able to just create anything, create art, create, it can practically create anything. But I think in the future, we will return back to our roots, our creative roots as well. So once AI has eventually taken over, has taken control, which it sounds a bit of a scary thing, you know, we'll then have lots and lots of free time to pursue creative things. So
I 100% agree with you. I think it's going to take away for society to function at a level that we need it to function with the amount of people there are on this planet and the services we need and everything we need. We are working at 100 miles an hour. You know, we're working, the average person wakes up, works, comes home, has something to eat, goes to sleep, and is on a hamster wheel. Where in my mind, I agree with you that a lot of those tasks that it takes to run society will be taken up by the machines, and creativity is what is going to have its day, you know, moving into this creative economy.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's it. Yeah, so yeah, as I was saying, you know, with regards to the business being a shadow of its former self, the reason why I say that is because COVID threw a bit of a spanner in the works, as it did for, you know, millions of service-based businesses across the world. You know, because obviously the whole world went into lockdown. The UK was just the same, and the care sector in particular in the UK was in lockdown for a period of 2 years. So it was, yeah, it was an incredibly tough time. You know, incredibly tough time, obviously, for the care sector and for older people, you know, because many people couldn't, many of the older people couldn't see their family members, you know, their sons and daughters, their loved ones, and vice versa. So, but also obviously for my creative business, you know, my
yeah, where you need
franchising.
to interact with people on a day-to-day basis, impossible. I still can't believe we
Yeah,
lived through that. Honestly, every now and then it like flashes, I get a flashback. And I'm like,
yeah,
did that really happen or did I watch a movie? Anyway, tell
yeah,
me about
yes,
your first encounter with Bitcoin. Did that, like very many people, happen,
yes.
or your deep interest through COVID, or was there a sort of a period before where you had encountered or your interest had been sparked in Bitcoin?
So my journey with crypto started in 2017, pretty
Okay.
much. I'd say properly started in 2017. So that was when I started looking into Bitcoin, into Ethereum, into Litecoin. Um, I think XRP was another one. Then we very quickly in 2017, you might not remember this. Did you join crypto in 2017? You part of
No,
the
but I was aware of it.
2017 group?
My brother, I wasn't doing it, but my brother was taking me. He was in the on that journey. So
Mm, yeah. So yeah, 2020 was sorry, not 2020. 2017 was great. It was such a good time for crypto because that was the ICO phase. That was where, you know, obviously you had a fair amount of bad actors and scams and things that were funded, but you also had some fantastic projects as well that were also funded during the ICO phase. Um, and yeah, it was great, you know. Whereas obviously, you know, what we've seen in this current cycle is we've just seen people just gambling on memes, you know. Whereas at least, yes, okay, you know, to a degree, the whole ICO phase, well, you know, you were gambling on projects, but but at the same time, you know, you knew that you also felt like you were investing in something. You were investing in the future. You know, you're investing in something that was going to be a huge part of the future. You know, part of this blockchain future that
yeah,
we're all involved in. And yeah, that was a pretty crazy time, that 2017. So that was when I really got involved in Bitcoin, in Ethereum, other cryptocurrencies, and I just saw the potential of the space, the whole space.
yeah. And then how did you move from Bitcoin into stacks? When did that happen? Also 2020, 21?
Yeah. So probably it was probably around 2022, I think. Probably around 2022. So yeah, what's that, like the very tail end of that cycle, if you like. We're going into, I guess, probably going going towards the bear market at that point. So that was when I sort of properly discovered Stacks. The fact that it's a Bitcoin L2. Then I very quickly looked into BNS, and I think BNS is probably one of the first touch points actually in the Stacks ecosystem. When people enter the Stacks ecosystem, obviously they'll have their Xverse or Leather wallet, but then they'll also be thinking, okay, can I have a human readable name, behind this address? And so as I say, it's one of the first things I think that new entrants to the Stacks ecosystem see.
I think also
BNS.
the ENS is such a huge thing. It kind of specifically, prior to 2020, in the earlier, because ENS had a day, it really went through a huge kind of, I don't know, it was like everybody wanted to have, I don't even know how many I got,
It did.
So I think when you kind of then move over to, because that's kind of everybody's journey, right? It's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Stacks.
Yeah. It's I mean, Ethereum. I at the moment at the moment my thoughts on Ethereum is that it's probably kind of had its day. To be honest, it had its day in the sun, and I kind of feel like Bitcoin is going to completely just outlast everything. As we've seen, since 2020, even when you joined, there's been a lot of fads and trends that have come and gone, and projects that we perhaps thought were going to be really big, and they've just kind of ended up being, pretty much dead chains. So I don't necessarily think that of Ethereum, but I think that it's had its heyday for sure. And ENS as well, actually, to be honest.
I have that, it's kind of, I think I was also a little bit, I was interested in a lot of the currencies because I found the entire idea interesting, of what we were doing. But I've realized very quickly that I'm very like blinkers on Bitcoin Stacks. I struggle even with other L2s, to be honest with you. As much as I'm open to them. Pardon?
It makes complete sense. Yeah. It's a very, I think is quite, compared to other projects in the crypto space, in the sort of the whole crypto ecosystem, the Bitcoin and Stacks, I think is pretty straightforward to understand. Stacks is anchored to Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't have that programmability, and Stacks is that sort of program layer. Stacks is like the application layer for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin doesn't have that capability. That's it. Literally, like that is pretty, straightforward to understand. And then in being that application layer, obviously we can build DeFi applications, which empower Stacks and Bitcoin users.
People always say when there's a good idea, often you'll think to yourself, why hasn't anybody thought of that before? And that's kind of when it's a really good idea, because it seems so obvious. And that was, for me, when I couldn't believe that when I found Stacks, that you could do this. And I remember telling every single person that I knew, listen, this is like the biggest thing, and I don't understand why people are not, so I mean, Muneeb was so ahead of his time, with this idea. And the fact that nobody else saw it was very peculiar to me, and thank you to Ordinals, really, that brought all that attention over to the idea that you could, Bitcoin could be exciting, and more than just a store of value. Let's talk about BNS For people
Mm.
who actually, yeah, I kind of, you were saying that it seems very obvious to you when you kind of,
Mm.
you're gonna, you need some sort of an identity, right? We have it with everything. We have our we're so used to it as a people. You're at this. Everything has a
Mhm.
handle or
Mhm.
a username, or this is obviously so much more than that. So why don't you take us through it for people who are listening in, who are
Mhm.
interested in BNS and who've never heard of it before? Tell us what it
Mm.
is.
Yeah, so BNS, Bitcoin name system, and it was BNS was in essence the beginning of Stacks. So when Manib and Ryan Shea started Blockstack, which was rebranded to Stacks, it was literally all about BNS. It was all about the Bitcoin name system,
Yeah.
and this was in 2014.
That's
So
actually a
so
great story. Do you want to are you going to take us through that story? Because I love
yeah,
that. I love the story of this BNS story. Actually, it's a
yeah,
very
yeah,
good
yeah.
story.
I mean, it's important because it's
Yeah,
what has led Mani to obviously found Stacks, or
yeah,
sort of rebrand it to Stacks, and then obviously there's ended up being a blockchain that is anchored to Bitcoin and has 100% Bitcoin finality now as well. So BNS was started in 2014 by Manib and Ryan. Um, it's about 11 years old now.
mm,
Then in 2015, it was moved to Bitcoin. So it was initially initially based on Namecoin. So Namecoin is another blockchain, a very old blockchain, and I believe Manib and there might have been a few others like Trevor Owens. They started something called what was it called? I think it was One Name or One App. I'm
yes,
trying to, the name's gone out of my
yeah.
head. But yeah, so that was the
Didn't they
first sort of
burn
application.
40,
Yeah,
40 Bitcoin? They burned 40 Bitcoin.
they did. Yeah, burn 40 Bitcoin. So that was in 2015. Yeah, to actually put it on the Bitcoin blockchain. Yeah, 40 Bitcoin. Yeah, which is
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars, basically. But yeah, and then it was 5 years later. So ENS was created in 2015, I believe. BNS created in 2015. I might have got some of my dates wrong here, but yeah, so it was 2019. Yes, 2019. It's 2019. 2019 when BNS moved to Stacks and when Blockstack was rebranded to Stacks.
Mm.
So yeah, so BNS has been on Stacks for um, oh no, sorry, it might be 2020. Sorry, it was 2020 when BNS moved to Stacks. So it was June 2020. No, June 2021. There we go. Get my.
And
This
Ruby's
is,
the
this
first
is the thing about COVID is that 2020 and 2021 are a complete blur to me now.
it's
Um,
one period. It's COVID.
yeah, yeah,
It's not a year. It's just called
blurry
COVID.
years. Yeah, I don't even know what happened. Um, so yeah, it was. So BNS was moved to Stacks in June 2021. So it's been on the Stacks blockchain, and it was written as a smart contract. June 2021. So whatever that is. 4 years now, nearly 4 years.
Mm. What
So
does it mean?
yeah.
What does it mean to have a BNS? What does it mean to have a .btc? You've got a wallet. It's a string
Mhm.
of numbers. So that's kind of so this is what happens. You open a wallet, your Bitcoin wallet on Stacks. Obviously, you have your long string of numbers. That's your wallet address, and you can purchase a .btc. Um, and you can use that instead
Mhm.
of your long string. But now that obviously means so much more than that. Take us through what this means. What is it? Why would you want a .btc?
Well, the most obvious reason to have a BNS name is to be able to receive stacks or other tokens and Bitcoin to that human readable address. So instead of copying your stacks address, your long sort of string of characters and numbers, you can just simply copy and paste your BNS name, and basically, and someone can copy and paste the BNS name into their wallet and then send you stacks Bitcoin or other tokens to that address. So the address in Leather will instantly come up. So if you've ever tried it, if you've ever tried to send anyone any tokens to their BNS name, there you'll see like their address come up at the bottom. So yeah, so that's the first, I guess, the first use case of BNS. The second kind of use case for BNS is it has to do with the zone file. So it's all of the bits of data that can be contained in the zone file. Like so for instance, I think with the zone file improvements at the moment, we've got room for a bit of a bio in there, so you can update some information about yourself in the zone file.
I didn't know that. What is a zone
Yeah.
file? What is a zone file? What even is that?
Yeah.
I've
So
seen it when I got my address, and it was like get a zone file. And I was like, I just thought, okay, well, I'm just clicking on buttons. You wonder why my wallet was hacked? No, I've been very careful. What is it?
So it's basically, I guess it's the beginning of having kind of more comprehensive data and information on the blockchain about your identity. At the moment, the zone file only consists of things like, like your X handle, or sort of address. There's the Nostra address that can be added there. There's a Bitcoin address that can be added as well. And that's important as well. If you are sending Bitcoin to your BNS name, you need to have that Bitcoin address in there in your zone file. What other fields are there? There might be a couple of other fields that I've missed. At the moment, it's quite simple. It's quite sort of simplistic. But the hope is in the future is that we can extend that functionality, the functionality of the zone file, so that it can be tied to your BNS name, to your address, and it can be a really key identifier of your identity, your reputation. This is me on chain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is obviously the most immutable, secure, trustless blockchain in the world. So that's the kind of the, I guess, the long-term attraction of BNS names, and the fact that they are both tied to stacks and Bitcoin. They have Bitcoin finality. But the zone files are at the moment quite sort of a simplistic kind of sort of list of data as to who you are, who Mel is.
How do I put that info in there?
On BNS One, you can do that.
There we go.
That's a little BNS One plug there.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. So yeah. Okay, so right, I actually didn't even know that. Can you believe it? And I've been on it. I actually bought mel.btc there.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, on BNS One.
Yeah. So I love that. And I paid, I didn't even care. I'm so happy I did, because at least I spent some of my stacks on a good thing. I spent, it cost me $250, which is not so bad for like a mel.btc. I mean, that is the coolest ever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. Not many people have their own names. So
no.
$250 is a steal, I'd say. Definitely.
That's how I feel. I've got Melanie, Bell, my name and my surname. I just went through, because obviously I got them many years ago. And I literally was like, nobody's going to impersonate me. So I've got them all. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And I obviously used to be Good Kitty. So I've got Good Kitty. I've got Bad Kitty. I've literally,
You've got Angry Kitty.
No, I've got no Angry Kitty. Does this look like an Angry Kitty? It's like this, my son, when I'm, it's my angry face.
Well, this is the thing, and you've got all of those under the same address.
Yeah. I've moved them now all into one wallet, obviously, because we couldn't do that before.
Yes.
So now I've got like my names. I've sort of recently obviously created a whole lot of new wallets. And now what the nice thing about starting over is I'm so familiar with everything. Because, when you start, you're so gung-ho. You just like,
Mm-hmm.
opening wallets for random things. They're all in the wrong place. So, and so I was going through them. And I've got Will You Marry Me.btc.
Okay.
Such fun ones. What is your most fun one that you've got?
Yeah, well, this is
You've
the
got some
thing.
fun
I mean,
ones.
oh, me. Gosh. No, mine are quite, the thing is, mine are quite serious kind of names.
I've
Yeah,
got
I mean,
NFTs, NFTEASE, NFTs. I
yeah,
feel like it's going to
yeah,
take
that's
over
good.
OnlyFans one day.
Yeah, well, yeah, you've got some fun names. I mean,
Yeah.
I've definitely gone for the more kind of serious, I guess, yeah, maybe like serious BNS investor kind of approach, like, getting brand names and company names and things of that nature. But yeah, so this is the great thing about BNS V2, which you've just pointed out there, is that you can have as many names as you want in a single address,
Mm-hmm.
whereas we couldn't have that before,
Mm-mm.
and it's the craziest thing.
Mm.
But this is why on and if you've ever been into the BNS community, we have some community members that have thousands of BNS names,
Yeah.
and they registered those BNS names when you could only have one name per address.
Yeah.
So they created thousands of accounts in their leather wallet
Yeah.
for each BNS name.
Yeah. I did.
Um,
I've got not that many, but for each one
yeah,
I did, I've got
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it is.
crazy.
Yeah, it is. It shouldn't have really happened, to be honest. It shouldn't have happened. It was a bit of a poor sort of technical decision that was
Mm.
made in the early days of BNS. But
Mm.
thankfully that's been rectified now with BNS V2.
Yeah.
And obviously with Nakamoto, it takes seconds, to register your BNS name, seconds to transfer it. The Stacks blockchain is just so much more beautiful now, from a UX perspective, because it's just so much so much faster. It obviously has, 100% Bitcoin finality now. We've now got SBTC. So, Stacks is just, it's on an amazing trajectory now. And BNS is right with it, and this is
Yeah,
why I'm
it's
so
like a
bullish
rough
on BNS.
diamond that's just slowly being kind of polished, into something
Mm,
magnificent, and it's beautiful to watch it grow.
exactly.
I kind of, there's this feeling like, people kind of, moan and gripe along the way. And it's kind of like, something beautiful takes a long time,
Mhm,
you know.
mhm,
And to me, there's something beautiful, what Manibas and Ryan, what they started is something very magical. I
mhm,
think one day we're going to look back and be very grateful to have been here in this time, you know.
mhm.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah. So,
I think Stacks, as I say, it's just on an incredible trajectory right now.
mm,
Um, and I think it will continue to pick up institutional interest as well with
mhm,
SBTC.
mhm,
Um, it feels sometimes though, if you're pretty active on crypto Twitter, it does sometimes feel like we're the only ones talking about it.
mhm,
But I do think the rest of the ecosystem will catch up, and they'll be like, "Why the hell didn't we look into Stacks sooner?" As soon as Stacks continues to catch a bid from the institutions, then we
yeah.
will have the rest of the ecosystem being like, "Damn, we need to join this Stacks train."
Mm,
Um, I think it'll be unstoppable once the ball really starts to pick up pace.
yeah. And all the building blocks are being so beautifully laid, the
Mhm.
foundations of it, the builders that are building. We were just saying the other day that so many of the builders have been here through the hardest of times, through a very grueling um, bear market,
Yeah.
and kind of just head down. The building was slower, but it never stopped. you know.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
think it's not just it's something very important, and it lives with the Bitcoin ethos. You know, it's so aligned
Mhm.
to Bitcoin. Not only does it settle on Bitcoin, but it settles with integrity, you know, which is what I love so
Mhm.
much about it. um all right, so we kind of spoke about why it is important to get yourself a .btc. Let's talk about, for people who are watching and they're like, okay, right, I love Bitcoin, I'm interested in stacks. um
Mhm.
what do I do? So you get yourself a
Mhm.
leather wallet, um and then you head over to
Yeah, next
uh
one.
BNS One. Okay, there are now.
Yeah.
What are the? Let's talk about, because I'm not quite sure which order we should talk about in. But obviously, there's three different websites that are out there. There's
Yeah.
obviously the original
Mhm.
BNS website.
Mhm.
Then there's actually more, because then there's the BNS Foundation.
Mhm.
Then there's BNS V2, and then there's BNS One.
Mhm. Yes.
Read
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah. So prior to BNS One and all of these other kind of sites, it was very the ecosystem was quite fractionalized, um, or fractioned, let's say. From BNS's perspective, um, we had quite a few different sites where you could, register BNS names. You could send stacks to different BNS names. There's various like little kind of bitty tools that
Mhm.
existed. Um, and then Hank and Jeff, who were part of Mechanism, which I think has now sort of been kind sort of disbanded, let's say. Um, they created Dots. So I
I
don't know
remember
if you ever
that.
used
Yeah, yeah.
Dots.so. Yeah, you
I
used to use
bought
that.
dot apps. I think I bought Mel.app there, or music.app or something.
Yeah, so that was so Dots.so or Dots was fantastic, and that was something that Hank and Jeff built.
Okay.
And that allowed you to wrap your BNS names into BNSX names, so that you could have as many BNS names in a wallet at once. So that was the
Okay.
only way to have lots of BNS names in a single address, was to wrap them using dots.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So and that was great. Kind of, so it filled a specific purpose, and the tool was fantastic as well. And Hank is just an incredible builder. Hank is now with Trust Machines, and he's been working on SBTC. And I think there was maybe one or two kind of things that went a little bit wrong. There was a few bugs and stuff with dots. So there was a period of time that the BNS community were without like a reliable platform that they could use. Um, and yeah, and it was during that period of time that we had D grants, of which you were one
Mhm.
of the stewards.
Yeah.
I'm including myself as well.
Yes.
And it was during that period, well, during the early phase of that program, where I was like, okay, maybe this is the opportunity now to build the platform that the BNS community wants and needs.
Got it.
Because I'm, being a key part of the BNS community since I think since summer of 22. I
Let's
felt
stop
like I
there for a
was,
minute. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
We'll come back to this, because it is
yeah,
something I wanted to ask you. How did that happen? Like, how did
yeah.
we missed that kind of out. So, um, you now have found stacks, you're in stacks, a light bulb goes off, and you're like, oh my God, owning your digital identity is like obviously the future.
Mm,
How did you end up such an important part of the BNS community, such an important
gosh.
community member?
Yeah, that whole question is quite a big question, because
Yeah.
but I mean the BNS community, the BNS community started, I believe, kind of late summer 2022, and it was founded by George Grant. So George might be watching this.
Yes.
um,
Hi, George.
yeah,
I
George,
know.
yeah,
Yep.
George Grant, yeah, George, and by a few of the other guys as well. So Almost, and I think there might be one or two others. Obviously, George, almost, myself, 3, and JS, we're all part of the core team of the BNS community. So we're the 5 guys that are part of the core team of the BNS community, listening to the BNS community, discussing things with them, in terms of what they'd like to see, improvements that could be made, keeping them updated as to the latest things going on with BNS. So that was created late summer 2022. The Discord appeared very quickly. At that time, we didn't have a marketplace, believe it or not. BNS didn't really have a marketplace, so we persuaded, George persuaded Nick to set up a BNS
Gamma.
marketplace on Gamma. Yeah, on Gamma. So that happened, I believe, in October 22. And then just things took off. I mean, there's been about 1.5 million stacks in trading volume on Gamma.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was with the BNS legacy, obviously, because BNS V2 is quite recent. Yeah. So that equates to, I think it equates to around $700,000-800,000. Yeah, in sales in terms of value.
Amazing.
I believe in the very early days of the Discord of the BNS community, we did around 100 ETH in trading volume. So we traded with Ethereum.
Really?
We traded with Ethereum for the BNS names initially.
On the Discord, right? Because wasn't it trading? Because I think I was in that Discord. I think I might still be. I just had to get out of Discord because it just got so overwhelming. Like all the communities and it got to a point where I remember one day Brett from Gamma, I don't know, I took a screen grab. I was trying to show him something. So I took a screen grab, but you could see my whole Discord. Or no, my Discord was behind. And then you could see there was like, I don't know, 1,000 something unread messages. And Brett was like, okay, I'm having a panic attack just thinking about all those messages that are unread. It was just like too much. But okay, so it was pretty crazy in that Discord. I mean, there was a vibe, right? With people trading these things. And you were doing it in Ethereum. How come?
Why did we do that? I think it was for ease. To be honest, I know it doesn't. You'd think, why wouldn't you trade in stacks? But I think it was both for ease and because a few of the core members at the time had come from Ethereum. So George initially he had come from the Ethereum ecosystem.
Okay.
I believe he's still part of the Ethereum ecosystem, but he had predominantly he was from the Ethereum ecosystem initially. So I think that was one of the main reasons, why we used Ethereum. But it was all done escrow. So we traded BNS names via escrow, or via George and a couple of other people. I sold, regrettably, one of my 3 digits to George in the early days.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, that was great. 100. It was about 100 ETH, which I think equated. I think around that time, pretty much did equate to around 100. It was somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000. Yeah. Just
trading in the Discord.
Yeah, just in Discord. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, can you imagine? I think about that now. In the future, that's never going to happen. These are amazing, amazing times. And, the things where you could do that, where you could just say, right, let's just gung-ho trade in Discord, fantastic.
That's it. Well, yeah, as I say, there was no marketplace, and there was this real demand for BNS names. Like people were like, we want all of the digits, we want all of the 3Ds, the 4Ds, and I was one of the first people, to sell my 3-digit. I believe it was to George. But yeah, no, it was great.
What was it? Can you say what it was? Was it a goodie? Can you remember?
What was it?
I'll never sell mine. My mel.btc.
I sold a few. I sold like 1-to-1. I sold
1-to-1. Oh my gosh.
I sold 1-to-1. I sold 247, so 24/7. I believe I sold that one as well. I sold some really good ones. I don't know
Wow.
why. I don't know why, Mel.
I know, but
um,
it's like with anything, isn't it? It's like, what was I thinking? Because it's just part of the fun. I think at the time, you're going to say to people, somebody was saying to me the other day, she used to, because in Berlin, you could just like cruise, there were bars and stuff and burger joints where you
mm,
could spend your Bitcoin. And
mhm.
she was like, spending like going out and spending like 10 Bitcoin a night, on burgers and
Yeah,
beers for you and your friends. And it's like, she was like, what the
maybe.
hell? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this
it's
is
that
it.
same time. You kind of in this time where, everybody's doing it, it's fun, doesn't seem like there's suddenly one day, you're kind of not thinking too far. I think the
Mm,
longer you are in crypto, the more kind of foresight you have, or the more you realize, because you've seen it happen. You've
mhm.
seen the graphs kind of go on an upward, if you pull back, it's
That's
all
it.
going up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, Bitcoin is digital gold,
Hmm.
so it's got real scarcity,
Mm,
and that's why with increased demand and sort of in a sense, due to its scarcity, diminished supply, it
hmm.
increases in value.
Yeah.
So, at the time where you're like, oh yeah, I could use my Bitcoin to pay for this coffee. At the time it feels like a good idea, but then you regret it like 5 years later because you're like,
Crazy.
damn, that coffee cost me about like $1,000.
It's like spending, there's this kind of, and this is to me where I think people are going to start. This is where Stack steps in and becomes so important because, you know, I mean, I've spent Bitcoin on groceries,
Mhm,
because our
mhm,
biggest grocery store, um, it was like all the thing, you could buy your groceries with Bitcoin.
mhm,
And I remember like about say 3 or 4 times I went into the store and I bought my groceries with Bitcoin. And I mean, now I think to myself, what the hell? Who would
yeah,
spend their Bitcoin on groceries? And this is where Stacks is such a beautiful thing because you're still connected to Bitcoin. And I always think of
mhm,
it like Bitcoin being the gold and Stacks being the jeweler, because it's obviously bringing this beautiful thing to life and making it wearable and usable and whatever. So,
yeah,
all right. So we
exactly.
would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Sorry.
way to think about it. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Mm,
Stacks gives Bitcoin utility, broad
mm,
utility, let's say.
mm,
Ordinals have obviously, given Bitcoin, a degree of utility for sure. And ordinals are that's an amazing innovation. Um, but yeah, Stacks gives Bitcoin, like that that real utility. It enables Bitcoin to be able to be programmable basically, and to be
mm.
used in DeFi. You know, so
I think like with everything, you have to pull out. You
Mhm.
um that made me think of something else.
God.
You have to take a
We're
step
talking about
back.
Bitcoin now. Crypto.
Back to crypto. Okay. Um, you kind of have to take a step back and look at it and go, okay, um, each thing has its place. Bitcoin has its place. It doesn't serve everything. Anybody who thinks it's going to serve everything, needs to take a step back. You need, all the parts. Like, you think of beautiful things. A
Mhm.
clock has got different, the workings inside it. A car. That's how things are. They're all made up of many things. No man is an island. You could go on and on saying these things. So you kind
Mhm.
of, they work so beautifully together.
Mhm.
I think a lot of currencies out there, um, that are sort of not in the Bitcoin ecosystem are also going to
Mhm.
serve purposes. You're not going to knock everything. There's going to be, and I think, you kind of, if you look at today, we don't just have the dollar. We
Mhm.
have many currencies, and those serve countries. I think
Mhm.
we're still going to have many countries currencies. They're going to just serve different things rather than different
Mhm.
countries. And
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, and I think with ordinals and stacks, and NFTs, and Bitcoin, these things at some point are all cogs that are going to come together. We just, because we're still busy building it, we're inside the house at the moment, and we're still building the kitchen and plastering the walls. We kind of, we can't, we're not standing back and going like, oh my God, look at this, Um,
Yeah.
so, I think and even if you look at art, with ordinals, that is kind of, I always think that would be like your Christie's or your
Mhm.
Sotheby's. You're not going to put an art print
Mhm.
on ordinals, or
Yeah.
you're not going to scan in, tear out a picture of the Mona Lisa out of a magazine and then put it on ordinals and go like, oh, this is
Mm.
worth like a gazillion dollars, because it's obviously not. But I think when you look at how stacks work, that serves a
Mm.
person, an incredible purpose in the art world. When it
Mhm.
comes to NFTs, when it comes to stacks, and even the kind of provenance that you can get with NFTs. So, I
Mhm.
think all of the things that are happening in the Bitcoin ecosystem all serve these beautiful purposes that one day are going to unfold, you know.
Mhm.
But all right, so talking about that, let's talk about the evolution of BNS.
Yeah.
Or you were actually talking about, do you want to take, we were talking about all the websites and all these different things, and they're all kind of coming
Mm.
together. So where are we?
Yeah.
Is there,
Yeah. So BNS One, yeah, I obviously came out of D grants, and yeah, I think with BNS One, I think kind of lots of things came together, or had to cut. I think lots of things had to come together for BNS One to exist.
mhm,
So the Nakamoto upgrade, that had to happen, because that has obviously, that's I guess increased the sort of, I guess, maybe, I don't know, like the latency of the Stacks blockchain. It can we've got so many more transactions now. 7-second transactions and things, so faster
yeah,
blocks. What other things happened? So BNS V2 obviously had to happen, so that we could have many names per address.
yeah,
So yeah, so Stacks Nakamoto, with Bitcoin finality, BNS V2. And I think once those things were in place, for something like BNS One to exist, a comprehensive platform like BNS One could then exist,
mhm,
because of those sort of initial ingredients, let's say.
okay,
And yeah, BNS One, it serves a complete purpose really
mm,
for BNS holders, for BNS investors. You can manage your BNS names on there. You can register new BNS names. You can manage your BNS names very comprehensively as well, so you can transfer, renew, revoke if you want to, or the revoke function's coming very soon if you really want to get rid of your BNS names. And yeah, and then we've also got the marketplace as well. So we've got a very seamless, comprehensive
mm,
marketplace. You can now make offers on your BNS names. You can update your zone file, so you can go to the profile section, which is in the top right, and update your zone file. And we're currently working on namespaces at the moment. So if you imagine the nav bar where it currently says community, we're hoping to turn that into namespaces, so people can create, manage, and analyze the performance of their namespaces on
nice,
BNS1.
nice. Yeah. Okay. So BNS One, did that, you obviously, you and huge member in the community, did that,
Mhm.
that was an idea that you had, obviously, as a businessman, you're in here. Did you have this idea for a while? Was it out of frustration? Obviously, was the community frustrated?
Mhm.
And you then
Yeah,
built this. Who is part of that team? Was it?
yeah. Everyone was frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, as I say, with this sort of sort of this fractioning of all these different tools, these little bitty tools and things that we had with BNS Legacy. I think the whole community was quite frustrated, and also the fact that we didn't have a dedicated marketplace. So obviously, we have, Gamma was great. I guess it's sort of fulfilled a purpose for sure. Absolutely fulfilled a purpose. With 1.5 million stacks in sales to date. But it wasn't sort of dedicated. It wasn't dedicated to BNS, and it didn't, I think, fulfill all of the functions that the BNS community wanted, which is what we've implemented in BNS One. So yeah, there was definitely some initial frustrations for sure from the community, from myself. Yeah, absolutely. As a businessman, I was, and as somebody that has built a business, and that's somebody that's worked in business development and business strategy for over 15 years in the charitable sector, is something that I looked at and I was like, okay, I think I need to fix this, because I need to, because if I don't do it, then no one will do it, basically. So I thought, okay, right, I need to do this.
Or someone else will do it.
Yeah, or eventually someone else will do it. Yeah, exactly. But because I was so in tune to the BNS community's needs, I thought, okay, right, I just need to do this. I just need to go for it, because it's been, as I say, I was part of the BNS community since summer 22, so it's 3 years. It's coming up to 3 years. So yeah, 2.5 years had gone by, and I was like, okay, right, we really needed like a dedicated platform for BNS, and I'm gonna have to build it because no one else is doing it. So yeah, so it was a frustration. And I did ask if developers wanted to join me, because I'm not a developer, I'm not a technical person. As I say, my expertise is in business, is in sales, marketing, and strategy and things. So I approached quite a few devs. Hero knows the full story about this, and I'm not going to go into it, but I approached a number of people. A lot of those people let me down.
I actually remember this, because I was also part of this. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
And it was like touch and go at the end. It was like, is this going to happen, or isn't this going to happen?
Well, this is it. Yeah, Hero knows, if Hero's listening, he knows a lot of the frustrations that I had. I had quite a few devs that said they wanted to be part of it, and then a few weeks later they let me down, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this ever going to get off the ground? And yeah, thankfully I approached, so this was after the BNS V2 upgrade, I approached Eric, and Eric was building something. He was building his own tool to his own sort of registration and marketplace platform for BNS. He was at the very beginnings of building that, and I approached Eric, and Eric loved it. He loved the idea. He loved all of the initial designs that were created. So this was by Rocky's team. Although I can, I'm very good on Figma myself from a product design perspective. And he was like, right, okay, I'm in. So Eric joined me. He joined me on BNS One, I believe, I want to say end of September, or it was between end of September to beginning of October, something like that. And I was like, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely seamless. It's beautifully designed. It's a beautiful website. I've used it, as you know.
Yeah, and Eric is just amazing. Yeah, very, very lucky to have found Eric. Incredible developer. I would probably argue he's one of the best developers in the ecosystem. He's very, very good. So after quite a bit of bad luck, I got lucky with Eric, and we've got some amazing plans for BNS One, as I say, to develop the namespace, and also we're sort of looking at developing a decentralized identity solution as well in the near future. So
let's talk about that.
We've got some big plans.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the evolution of BNS, and what does it look like? Because obviously there was some sort of confusion, and that happened at the same time, because DotLocker or My Locker or Locker, I think that was launched during the D grants program. I think, or around that time. And I remember there was this hectic confusion. What is it? Is it going to take over from BNS? So let's just talk about that, because I think there is
Yeah.
a lot of confusion about this. There's orange domains, there's Locker, there's BNS, then there was BNS V2, then BNS One. It kind of, I think for a while there were a lot of conversations I remember being a part of people just going like, what the fuck is this? What's going on? So
Yeah. I
yeah,
need
so
I need
you
to
can
drink
just,
some water because I'm about to talk about DotLocker.
yeah, exactly. It's like,
um,
okay, everything's
yeah.
okay. Stay calm.
So yeah. So I mean, yeah. So the premise behind DotLocker is, I completely understand it. I get it. It's all about onboarding people in the Web2 space. So people that are investing in the DotLocker, which is an actual sort of ICANN TLD, ICANN approved TLD, DotLocker.
Mhm,
So you
mhm.
can have a domain that is a DotLocker domain. Onboarding those guys onto Web3. So I can understand the premise there. I can understand the fact that it would be, you would feel like it would be quite an easy thing. Okay, they're going to register Mel.locker, so surely Mel's going to want a Web3 name.
That's what,
Um,
that is
yeah,
exactly what I don't understand. It's like,
yeah.
so I can just why don't I just go and get a .com and have it mel.com,
Mm-hmm.
mel.btc? Why do I have to have
Mm-hmm.
a .locker? I still don't understand
Mm.
that, to be honest with you. Does anybody?
Yeah, I think this has been the struggle. I think they've. I'm trying to remember the conversion rate, but I believe it's somewhere around 20%, which is not bad. That conversion rate is not bad at all. Yeah, heroes. It is all part of life. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They will make
this is it.
sense. That is
It's
exactly
all
it.
part of, it's all
Yeah.
part of the journey. Yeah, as I was saying, yeah, with BNS One, you'll have, just like with any startup, when you're building a startup, you'll have pitfalls, and you'll fall down and things will go wrong, but you've just got to get yourself back up, move on,
Mm.
and just continue. It's just life. But
It's beautiful.
yeah,
Like we were
yeah.
saying earlier, you know, this is beautiful. It's like watching your baby learn to walk. You
Mhm.
don't sit there crying because it's crawling. You
Mhm.
you celebrate it. And I think that is how
Yeah.
we've got to look at this. As much as we can giggle and say, look, I do not understand what it is. I remember talking about many things, years ago, not understanding, then understanding,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, you've got to
it's
persevere.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to persevere, and you've got to be resilient when building a startup. And yeah, I wasn't sure whether BNS One would get off the ground, but I
Mm.
persisted. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a persistent guy. So
Yeah.
I persevered with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, going back to DotLocker. So yeah, I think they've had about a 20% conversion rate. I believe, I think, I swear I saw on Crypto Twitter the other day, I saw on their account that they've had around 10,000 DotLocker names that have been registered.
That's
I think I
amazing.
think I think it's something like that. But I'm slightly kind of dubious as to whether they've had a 20% conversion rate on that, which would be 2,000.
Wow.
2,000 people, maybe not 2,000 people, but maybe, I don't know, let's just say, on average they own two DotLocker names, so maybe 1,000 people, up to 1,000
Mm,
people,
mm,
have then claimed their BNS name, and in order to do that, they'll have had to have installed Leather Wallet and things, and this, that, and the other. So yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical as to whether
mm,
that's happened. Um, it's tricky because the Web2 guys are very much. I think they're an older demographic, and I don't think that they fully understand Web3 and crypto. Whereas there's a
yeah.
slightly younger demographic, largely, I think, with Web3 and crypto,
Mhm.
that completely get it. Completely get the whole premise behind Web3, and having control over your identity, over your personal information, and being able to, just being in control of that from a decentralized perspective rather than our current, our current setup, which is very much centralized with Web 2.
Now, in my mind, before DotLocker came onto the scene, it was very clear to me that my .btc was going to be, to me, websites are very much part of Web 2. So we kind of look at them now and we're like, okay, we have to have a website, but I think as we move more and more into the future, websites are going to become like fax machines. They're going to be like, okay, bye. We're done with that. We are now in a new. So that's why I was confused. I mean, I understand, like you say, it's there to onboard those people, but I think ultimately, isn't your .btc going to be everything? It's not only going to be your wallet address, it's going to be your contact address, it's going to be your website, it's going to be where whatever you want in public is going to be. Is that kind of where this is going?
Absolutely. Yeah. Your Web3 name, your BNS name, that's next level. That's next level compared to Web 2, compared to your DNS name, a domain name. Because your BNS name, especially with zone file expansion as well to a degree. But you could also have like an encrypted key on there, within your zone file that only you have access to, that when you need to, you can then unlock access to your personal data and enable these centralized and decentralized entities to be able to access your personal data. So that's kind of the future. That's where I see the future for Web3 names, is that, like for instance, you could have your passport. You could have your passport encrypted. A lot of your personal information encrypted, but no one would have access to that apart from yourself, and you would have you'd basically have the key to that. You'd have like the encryption key to that information. And I can also see a world where you're paid. Where centralized entities pay you to access your personal data. Whereas at the moment, we very much give it freely, don't we? We give it freely to, let's just say, Facebook. They've got access to all of our personal, they know who we are, they know who we're friends with, they know our date of birth, they sometimes know where we live. They've got so much information about us.
They know what we want.
Yeah. And that information is sold to third parties as well, without our knowledge. Although, they would argue that we've signed their 50-page T's and C's, which obviously who reads their 50-page T's and C's and privacy policies.
Yeah, and the reason why it's 50 pages is to hide the one important line.
Exactly.
It's all just bullshit, except we know everything about you and we're going to sell it. Are you happy about that?
That's it. Yeah. So Web3 is about having sovereignty. There we go. Over your identity and your personal information. So that is like the whole premise behind Web3. So, I can definitely see a future where, you would use your Leather and Experts wallet to sign in to platforms. So instead of using Google or using Facebook, you would actually sign in and authorize access to these platforms, but via your Leather or your Experts wallet or another decentralized identity solution. And there's so much scope. There's so much scope for that. There's a lot of scope when it comes to namespaces as well, because I do believe that this is potentially how Stacks can expand as an ecosystem and onboard more users, is through BNS. So we could have like brands, businesses, lots of different entities could create their own namespace, and then they could they could create BNS names within that namespace, but they could also create subdomains and distribute, just as Boom Wallet has done, distribute sub.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you disappeared for a minute.
Yeah, don't know what happened
You popped into
there.
another dimension, quickly.
So you can, yeah, you can, you could, you could have brands and businesses that distribute subdomains, to their user base, and
Mm,
in doing so, they can access, obviously Web3. They can access the Stacks ecosystem. They know that their BNS name and their credentials and things that are held and encrypted within, Stacks, BNS, and also Bitcoin. Obviously being the most
mm,
immutable and secure asset in the world.
mm,
Um, yeah, so there are a lot of advantages, definitely. Yeah,
mm,
to Web3 and the Web3 future is in
yeah,
terms of taking ownership, taking ownership back of your identity, rather
mm,
than centralized identities and third parties just having access and distributing it and doing whatever they please with it.
mm, yeah. Yeah, it is, it's so important, and I think the idea, again, like you were saying, of just owning who you are,
Mhm.
and I think specifically as we move into, I mean, it's a topic I'd love to get into with you, but we running out of time.
Yes.
But as we move into this world of AI, I
Hmm.
think it's becoming even more important
Hmm.
to own your identity. There's a
Yes.
the know thyself, the famous
Hmm.
Greek philosophy quote, which I can't say in Greek, or Latin. But the other day I wrote an article and I said, "Know me so that I may know myself."
Hmm.
And that's kind of where we're moving with where we're becoming an algorithm,
Hmm.
and how much of myself will I give away if I don't own my identity? How do I own my
Hmm.
identity as we move into a world where everything about us is
Well, this is
accessible,
it.
you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, identity fraud is incredibly prevalent. I mean, I think it costs somewhere around $45 billion a year to individuals, identity fraud globally.
Wow. Wow.
Obviously, we're seeing the use of deep fakes, and
Yeah.
with AI, the whole use of deep fakes is going to become even more prevalent and even more problematic. So, this is where I see decentralized identity being really, really important in the future,
Mm,
in terms of proof of humanity, and also proof of AI as well.
mm,
For instance, if you're a business and you have an AI agent that you've sort of taken on to do a specific task for you, you want to prove that is the actual AI agent that you're working with and not a bad
mm,
actor. How are you going to do that? Okay, maybe I could verify their decentralized identity that is on the blockchain.
yeah.
So I think decentralized identity is going to be absolutely key as we move into this prevalent AI future that we're heading towards.
Mm. Well, again, that's where things, and if I look at the Stacks ecosystem, it's a beautiful map of the future. If you
Mhm.
look at what Zero is building,
Mhm.
with Zero Authority and creating this, I'm going to be talking to them in a couple of weeks, I think, on the show, where you're able to build yourself a reputation. So not only do you own your identity that is
Mhm.
uh, where you can keep yourself to yourself, but you can show what you want to show, which is your reputation, which is so much more valuable than an interview, than
Mhm.
any CV. It's there, it's on chain. You can't fib about it. What you've done is there, it can't be rubbed out, you know.
Mhm.
And as we move into this AI time,
Mhm.
uh, or future, um, that's why it's so important to kind of link all those things to that one name that is you.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, I think it's going to be incredibly important. It's something that just really excites me. Actually, it does
Yeah,
really excite me. But
yeah.
AI, the prospect of AI, and the transformation that we're going to witness over the next 10 years is also quite scary as well. I think I
Mm,
don't think we know we I don't think we fully understand what's going to happen with
mm,
this. Like we're on. we're on the base of a parabolic curve, basically, because AI doubles every 6 months. AI capability doubles every 6 months. Yeah. And then what happens when it doubles every 4 months, and then every 3 months, and it'll just get better and
then
better.
every 3 minutes.
Yeah, and then we have quantum computers. Yeah, and it'll be like every day it gets better. So yeah, we're on a bit of a scary parabolic curve right now. We're at the very base of it, but I think by 2035 we'll see. Yeah, I can definitely see us seeing some significant job losses by 2035 for sure. Because employers they'll stop employing. Like employment, I think employment will skyrocket. Yeah, as a result of AI and AI agents, businesses will just be like, I kind of don't need people. I can just hire these like 20 AI agents to do everything for me. I don't need anybody else. So
well, if you look at Manus.ai, you hire, there you go, and you hire somebody for a certain amount of hours. I think it's a week or a month, and you pay for how many hours you want that AI agent to work. It's the first kind of real AI agents, because obviously ChatGPT is really just a chat AI rather than a proper AI agent, which is what Manus is introducing. But I've been writing a lot about it lately, and the idea of I'll send them to you. The last one I wrote was an eternal consciousness, because you've got to ask with your, and again, this goes back to BNS and owning this place that is, you were talking about the key, having a key to what you want to release, because if you've given away, you think if you go back, I don't know, 10 years, and you say to somebody, well, you're going to use your eye to open your phone, and people have got the phone on the desk that they're turning the numbers around, or the phone on the wall. You say, oh no, one day you're just going to pick up your phone and your eye's going to open it. People would just be like, oh, okay, here's a hospital and here's a pill. And so I think if you sort of start looking at what's going to happen, we've given away that much of us, we're becoming an algorithm. Our consciousness is going to start living outside our bodies. And that gives you eternal life without a choice.
Yeah, or with a choice. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see a point in the not too distant future where, with the introduction of quantum computers, we have quantum simulations where we can, in essence, upload our consciousness into a simulation and live forever, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
One
day sending a consciousness is going to be sending an email. You're going to like sending an email. You're going to be able to send, and I've been saying this for years, the idea of sending your consciousness back and forward through time. People kind of talk about time.
Oh, Mel's gone. Okay, might as well answer some questions, actually, unless I get cut off. So what if I lost my BNS where I owed my identity reputation crime? Well, in a way, it would also be tied to your address, your Stacks address. So not necessarily tied to your BNS name, but your BNS name would be your identifier, in essence. Yeah, Mel Melt. Hey, peace.
I don't know what happened. I'm not sure where she just disappeared. She must be having technical difficulties. A great show, man. Great stuff. I thought I had a hard stop at 1:30, but apparently it was her.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah.
No, I really didn't have a hard stop, but I mean, it seems like and now we got.
I mean, I don't I don't mind. I didn't really have a hard stop, so I can continue going. But but yeah, I was just answering some of the questions actually, because Hero asked what if he lost his BNS. So yeah, as I was mentioning, that'd be tied to your stacks address really.
Snazzy.
And
yeah,
then,
is there a plan for some kind of abstraction to be able to recover if you have? Is there any plans for that kind of thing?
yeah, so like if you if you're, I mean, the thing is we're still sort of working this out because we are very early stage, me and Eric, with sort of working on some sort of decentralized identity solution, so we're sort of just sketching it out at the moment. But it would very much be tied to your address. So not necessarily your BNS name, more so your address, your like encryption key, let's say, to your personal information.
So you might be able to get your wallet back, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to get your NFT back if it got transferred out of the wallet.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I would say that is incredibly rare because only you would be able to authorize that transfer of your BNS name. Your BNS name is not just going to be spontaneously transferred out of your wallet. So, but yeah, no, I see huge potential with regards to namespaces. So that's currently what we're working on at the moment in terms of, like, for instance, Meta could set up .meta, and then they could set up a few BNS names with regards to that, and then subdomains, and then they could, send those subdomains to their employees, and that could be part of their access to Meta's offices.
Do I understand you correctly? You lost access to your HeroGamer.btc BNS? That's
really? That was
Hero actually had an issue like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
People need to be safe. That's number one. I just want to say, and even then, there's not a whole lot you can do. So, audit your situation, have your backup situations in order, and all of that stuff because it happens. And Hero had some of his devices stolen, so for a while he couldn't even access his X handle, his Discord. I don't even know if he's gotten access back to his Discord.
I see. Okay.
He had a really hard situation, so I'm assuming that this is related to that.
I see. Yeah. Oh, that's a difficult thing. Well, yeah. I mean, if they've got access to Hero seed phrase, yeah, then that would mean that they would have access to the wallet and therefore NFTs, BNS names, and yeah, just be able to transfer those out. But obviously, if they don't have access to the seed phrase, then yeah. Oh, he's got access back to Discord, not Telegram. Okay. But yeah, I was getting well into AI. You know what? I could talk about AI for like hours. I love it.
Yeah, it's what we're due to have you on again. You're always a pleasure. We're welcome. You have an open door anytime you want to come chat with us on any of our shows. We're glad to have you. I don't know what happened to Mel. Let me see if she messaged me. It was
a good
my laptop died.
Yeah.
All right, she's asking me to close the show.
Yeah,
her laptop died. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Mel. This has been an excellent episode. It was great, and always, this is just another little bit of the organized, the motif. It fits right in. Snazzy, thank you for joining today. It was a great conversation. She was I think she was really just getting ready to wrap it up anyway. So I don't think she had any more questions. She can also go. That's why we have a show that we can all talk and talk and talk. So we'll have to have you on again. You definitely are a wealth of knowledge. I didn't realize all that you had been involved in the ecosystem. So I'm really glad that I get a chance to get access to all of that information. And that's really one of the strong points of what Mel brings to the table. Thank you guys so much. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. As I forget how she closes out the show. I was going to try to do it like she does. But thank you for joining Bitcoin and Beyond. And Melanie will be back next Thursday with more awesome guests. And we will hope to see her on the morning show too. And she's a regular with us. Then, Snazzy, we love you. What's going on in BNS One, and all the cool stuff that you've been working on for our ecosystem. Thank you so much for what you do in our space, and we look forward to having you back again soon. Thank you guys all for tuning in today, and
cheers, guys.
we'll talk to you soon. Peace out.